Constellation Research, actually, I am here. We're headquartered in Silicon Valley. I travel back and forth between the two of them. And what I do there is I cover more than just the collaboration space. We do what's called the future of work, kind of a cliche saying, but I just want you to be aware I cover more than just the software aspects of things. The future of work is incredibly exciting because of things like the way we work, the places we work, the locations we work, the styles we work in, the people we work with, et cetera. And I'm going to talk to you about a lot of that today. I'm going to kind of take you through the evolution of the tools that we're using. So let me just skip through to here. So first of all, we're going to talk about the way these tools started, kind of reinforce some of the exciting things you heard from Nextel and Hulu. I love when the presenters before me kind of segue into some of the things I'm going to talk about, and this way I can kind of support some of the things they were saying, which was great. Then we're going to talk about, unfortunately, there are challenges in this. It's not all perfect. Everyone loves to talk about social business is nirvana and everything's perfect and Facebook and Twitter are wonderful. And, well, there are challenges with that. So we're going to talk about that a bit. And then the last thing I'm going to do, and the part of my job that I enjoy the most, is kind of give you a glimpse into what I think the future is going to be like. If I was better at this, I wouldn't be here because I'd choose the lottery numbers. But I'll try to stick to the future of enterprise software, and we'll see how I do there. So the starting point is the fact that communication, believe it or not, is not a new idea. We're all here. We're comms professionals. We get the newest tool of the week. We're all excited. But this has been going on for a long time, folks. But if you look back at the original tools that we had, these were a hell of a lot harder to use than the tools we're using today. We've heard a lot about wikis and blogs and things today. The original wikis were really hard to update. If somebody else came here and wanted to add something to this, took a while. Spelling mistakes, real big problem when you're using tools like this. But it's not just updating these tools. The problems with the original styles of communication were things like the reach of them. This was a great way to tell stories and share histories and document things, but you had to get to this location to do that. You had to be in the cave or at the location or be where this was. So it didn't reach the large audience that you wanted to be able to reach. These original tools also had no feedback mechanism. There was no collaboration in this. This was just basic storytelling. And that's where a lot of people are at today inside their organization. And what they want to do is go to stories like you're hearing about on social intranets where people have the tools, the ability, and the power to stop just pushing down information and actually start working together. So this gets exciting. This is when people start to want to collaborate. And people have to work together to accomplish great and exciting and good things. But working together kind of is just a cliche thing. And we're going to see through my talk that working together actually has to have a goal. You can't just have a social intranet. You can't just have profile pages and wonderful things. When you hear customers talk about adoption and struggling with adoption issues, one of the things we help you work with is why are you having those problems and how can you get these type of collaboration tools into the flow of the way people work. And I'll cover that in just a bit. Now, there's two things that are coming together to make this actually more powerful and good. If you're on the Twitterverse or any of these things out there, you'll see that evangelists and the people that live and breathe this stuff like myself love in our little echo chamber of ourselves to argue which of these is more important. Technology trumps culture. No, you have to have a culture of collaboration inside your company or it's not going to work. Well, I hate that argument because it's both. There is no way this isn't going to happen with both. If the wheel hadn't been invented, you wouldn't have got to travel places. If electricity hadn't happened, you wouldn't have all the things we have. Technology is important. Well, culture is also important because just because you had the wheel, people had to want to go places. So there's all these amazing academic arguments and research studies that we put out and try to pontificate and make ourselves sound really smart in the research world. But the reality is you have to have both of these. And because these are coming together, sharing is becoming the new normal. This is just part of our lives. What we're eating, what we're doing, where we're going, checking into restaurants. I got here and I tweeted the view of the place, and I'm sharing the slides of what we're doing, and I'm going to look up Yelp reviews for where I should go eat while I'm in downtown Toronto, and everything is shared. Probably too much shared, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we're kind of getting to that place where they're sharing. On the technology side, there's lots of things that are enabling us to do this. It's a whole 45-minute talk of mine, so let me sum it up in 10 seconds. Things that are making this easier are mobile and the cloud. cliches. I think you've heard them all. I don't have to push them to you, but the mobile device is the greatest thing that's ever happened. You know, you've got a camera in your hand 24 hours a day. You've got a GPS, a flashlight, a measurement, a level. I was hanging shelving last night with my Android phone because there was a level app on it. You know, it's incredible what we're able to do in these devices. And the cloud enables organizations to deploy software faster, easier. You know, I was the head of Lotus Notes marketing for a long time, for those of you that know that evil piece of software that most people hiss at me about. And you know, the hardest thing about it was, you know, it was this 200 or 400 or 500 megabyte install every time you wanted a new feature. So let's take a quick poll here. I'm going to assume most of you are Office users. Raise your hand if you're using the latest version of Office. Brand new, 2013 or whatever it is. 5–10% of you. Raise your hand if you're using an old version of Gmail. There's just no such thing. You know, in the cloud, everything is new, everything is great. And that's what you get with tools like Igloo software. When they're hosting it for you, you know, when they make an update, you guys get it. And I think that's great. So makes it really good. Now, on the cultural standpoint, I would go on and on forever on this. I want to keep it kind of short. My belief is that I despise this term millennials. Almost everywhere I go, we hear about, hey, everything's great and new, and you have to, how do I take care of my 20-year-old employees? Well, no offense to anybody in the room, but I don't see a lot of 20-year-olds in this room. And all of us do this for a living. Guess what? Your age is irrelevant to the ability you have to be a IT professional or a comms professional or understand tools. What's important is what I call your digital proficiency. The short version of that is, how skilled are you at technology and how comfortable are you with it? Because the two go hand in hand. You can be really good at it, but not comfortable with it. You could be really comfortable with it and not really good at it. You know, you want to be on Facebook, but you don't know how to use it. Or you're, you know, an X509 certificate security expert and you're terrified because you know what Facebook can do wrong. And you would never tag a picture in your life because guess what? Facebook is slowly assembling the largest online database of facial recognition software on the planet. So you could be really an expert in something but not be comfortable with it. Call these your digital proficiency, and we have 5 buckets at Constellation Research. I'm just going to mention 2 of them. The natives, people that are comfortable dealing this way. Stupid people like me that go and tweet pictures of landscapes and things like that. Or the people that are crossing into this world. And so culture and technology are both important. Now, how do those things apply to social software? That's kind of the main thing we want to hear about today, and I'll go through this a little bit quicker. You know, we started in this first generation of tools. I mentioned Lotus Notes. There was others. There's SharePoint and GroupWise and all of these things, Outlook and Office, and all these tools that we've lived with for 20+ years. And the kind of key attributes of all of these things, thick clients installed, I kind of mentioned that. Proprietary things that don't talk to each other. I mentioned the cloud earlier. One of the beautiful things of the cloud is that things can talk to each other, whether it's at the API level or the SDK level or whatever the geeky stuff we want to get into. But you know, the old style was proprietary. And then this miraculous moment happened where we started to get comfortable, and the Facebooks and Twitters and LinkedIns and all these tools of the world became a part of our day-to-day lives. And why did these consumer tools start to happen? I've mentioned the cloud and I've mentioned mobile, and what that kind of area occurs is it creates this Facebook for the enterprise. And that's where a lot of people are at. And when I was director of marketing at Social Text about 5 years ago, we used to use this term all the time. We'd go into CIO offices and CXO offices, and we'd sell this software by going, you need a Facebook for the enterprise. And that was kind of good 3 to 5 years ago. And then the software got in, you created your intranet, and everybody went, well, I don't want to share pictures with lunch things and stuff like that. I don't want a Facebook, I want a work tool. So how did these things kind of evolve from Facebooks for the enterprise? Well, the first thing they did is they started integrating with the other systems you have. They started pulling in CRM records and pulling in ERP records and linking to your content management system and allowing you to have calendar entries and groups and all these things. So we kind of evolved from Facebook the enterprise to this getting work done. And that's the really important stage where hopefully a lot of you are starting to get to. This phase of we've now got the tools, we've got the intranets, we've got Hulu Universe, and we've got Nextel World. I feel kind of embarrassed because my website, if you actually go, is called Lepo Land. So I see like a theme. It's really big and then a little bit smaller, and now I feel insecure. I've got this little Lepo Land. So I need to get something bigger out there. But that's this kind of getting work done type of thing, and that's where we want to get a lot of people to. And then the next, and kind of what I do a lot of my work on and my research and try to help you all get to, is this idea called purposeful collaboration. And that's where adoption really doesn't have any more arguments. How many people, what is the success rate of your finance system inside your company? I would guess 100% of your employees get paid, right? You know, the HR tools, there is no such thing as adoption numbers. We want to get 100% adoption in your social tools, and how do you do that? You make it a part of the way you work. It doesn't become an optional if you want to go share or if you want to ask a question. It becomes a part of your sales process, your marketing process, etc. And we'll take a look at that right here. So no longer thinking of social as an add-on, commenting and liking and doing things, and how do we augment SharePoint, and you know, does our company use an activity stream, and should I blog and should I wiki? No, your employees come to work to be in sales and marketing and finance and legal and doctors and all of the jobs that they do. They don't come to work to be social. Only the community managers have titles that include being social, and they have wonderful, wonderful roles to do. You want to augment what your employees do with these tools. So if they're in sales, you want to take that old Salesforce automation tool and you want to add integrated information to it where instead of just going, ooh, I moved an account from probability 30% to 50%, I'm going to celebrate, maybe I'll make my quarterly numbers. No, you want to do that same process, but you want to say, does anybody in the company know somebody that works at Acme Corp? Tie it back to that Salesforce record or Sugar CRM record or whatever it happens to be, and all of a sudden you can collaborate around the workflow of closing a deal. So, you know, I can go through hundreds of these examples, and I'm happy to talk to any of you outside, you know, when I learn more about each of your companies. But you want to take the processes that your company does and make those social. And that's what we call this purposeful collaboration. So it's great. It's nirvana. Everything's wonderful. People like myself and all the product managers and marketers for all the software companies tell you this stuff's great, right? Well, it has its challenges too. I love getting in fights with people that say, I hate email. It's the worst thing in the world, and social is awesome. There's a lot of problems in the social world too, folks. Let's don't kid ourselves. So let's talk about a few of them and talk about how to solve them. So the first one that drives me bonkers, I just mentioned this email thing. I have information overload in my inbox, so I'm going to move to a social way of working. Well, guess what? Now all of a sudden you have everybody's inbox. You know, if you're trying to keep, how many of you read everything you could possibly read on Facebook this morning? You know, I didn't. Less stuff do I process than do I miss. You know, the balance isn't there. So at work, we have to figure out how to make these tools extremely relevant. And there are great ways to do it. So we're going to look at solutions to each of these things. Don't let me scare you off, and I don't want Igloo going, why did we get him up here talking about how bad these tools are? These tools are great. So we'll look at solutions for them. But the second problem is, since about 1993 or 4 when I started doing this, every single new solution has told me it's going to make me more productive, I'm going to get more work done, and it's going to be better than that previous generation of tool. Other than the fax machine, which is kind of still around, I haven't stopped using a single other tool since. I still have email, and then I added instant messaging to it, and then I added blogs to it, and then I added wikis to it, and then I added social networking to it. Next year I'll add holograms to it, and then we'll be going around with smell-o-vision the year after that, and we're doing all these things. The tools just keep getting added. So we have these challenges of which tool do we use and where do we use them. So we have to solve this issue. And then the third that's kind of related to that is this bifurcation of information of where did it go? I used to love my inbox. Everything was there. I'm one of the few people on the planet that loves their inbox. It's the only place I search. Everything's there. People send me stuff, it's there. Blog posts come in, it's there. Now there's stuff sort of everywhere. Did I put it on Facebook, or did I put it on Twitter, or did I put it on Igloo, or did I put it on Yammer, or is it in SharePoint, things like that? So we have to solve sort of this where did I put it problem. But that's fine. Those are 3 major challenges, and guess what? There are ways to solve all of them, thankfully. Don't run off in fear with your hair on fire going, why are we doing this social stuff? There's great ways of solving all these things. The first is integration. I kind of mentioned in the cloud the ability, the beautiful ability for things to talk to each other. So you're in your social intranet, and people have mentioned widgets and things like that. To pull multiple sources of information together into a single location for you to be able to get access to things is a wonderful, wonderful experience, whether it's on your tablet or your mobile phone or on your PC. The ability to have these tools starting to talk to each other with things like single sign-on, so it doesn't matter how many tools you're on. Is anybody familiar with, have you gone to a website and you've logged on with your Facebook ID? You ever notice that? You don't have to use a new ID on that site. That's kind of the world that's starting to occur inside the enterprise space as well. You're starting to have the ability to use a single logon ID, whether it's things like Ping Federate or Okta or Salesforce's ID or anything you'd like to use, the LDAP directory from your SharePoint environment, doesn't matter. But we're starting to have this ability to have really nice single sign-on throughout your entire intranet so that you can get access to your email, your HR information, and your social websites all at the same time. You're able to bring in enterprise software to these places, your sales tools, your marketing tools, your file sharing tools. So for example, if I am using Dropbox, but I'm on my social intranet, I don't have to switch and go to Dropbox. I can actually have like a little Dropbox widget there. So integration is very, very key to solving a lot of these problems. The second, and one of the areas I do a lot of research in, is sorting and filtering. This is combating that issue where I talked about information overload. Well, as these tools become more and more intelligent, they'll start to give you the ability to sort and filter what you need and what you want to access. So it's not going to say, here's the entire stream of everything that's possibly happening. Instead, it's going to say, Alan, this is what I want you to see right now. I think I'd give us a 3 out of 10 as an industry on this area right here, which is what really excites me, because there's a lot of work to do here and a lot more context to happen, and the tools are going to know what you need and when you need it and what you're doing. And I'm in Toronto, show me Toronto-based location things and stuff like that. So the tools are going to start to become more and more intelligent to help get rid of all of the noise that's out there. And anybody that's ever tried to figure out Facebook's algorithm for doing this, you probably light your hair on fire. I think most posts in Facebook are, I don't understand, I missed those posts in Facebook. Like I see that go by all the time. So enterprise software is starting to do a really good job at this. And again, I can talk about a lot of exciting things in this area. But then perhaps one of the most important things, and I know Igloo's talked to you earlier today about it, so I won't go on and on about it, but is this concept of task management. About 10 years ago when I started working in Silicon Valley after big bad IBM, I had that big kind of organizational structure of 400,000 employees around me. I went off to Silicon Valley where the theme was chaos. They hated corporate structure, and they said, the web is going to bring everything. Wikipedia lets anybody do anything at any time. The whole thing is unstructured information, unstructured data. And about a decade we've been doing this. We've been pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping information out there and talking about how great social is. I think we're at the stage where we need to organize what's going on. And task and project management is the best way of doing that. So instead of just posting something in your enterprise stream, status update, this is what I'm working on, now you have the ability to say, you know what, I'm really trying to close that Acme account. Dan, can you help me get that done? And at mentioning that name and even assigning a date and a time and a priority. The integration of project and task management into social is one of the most powerful organizational constructs you can have to ensure that employees are actually meeting those adoption criteria that you have. No longer is it just a blog or just a wiki or a knowledge base or an activity stream, but these social intranets become places to organize what you're working on. And I think if you have one takeaway from today, that's probably one of the areas you should focus on. How can our people, you don't want to be a Six Sigma certified project manager that needs a black belt and all these crazy PMP certifications. You don't need Microsoft Project, but you also don't want to use Excel attachments in email to manage projects. The social intranet world's bringing that kind of in the middle. You're not doing email and Excel, but you're not doing full Microsoft Project. You're just assigning tasks with dates and times and making sure the workflow is actually happening. So I think task management is one of the best ways to combat that information overload problem that I was having. And then finally, the last one, the famous content is king. It's kind of being replaced with context is king. What I'm working on right now, what do I need, who do I need it from, what needs my attention is kind of the next big thing. We're going to talk about that just in a second. But you don't want to, put the square peg in the round hole. You just want to be doing the right thing at the right time using the right tool. When I mentioned, there's a plethora of tools out there, what context should I be working in? Is it a conversation that we need to have everybody in the company have? Is it a blog post that I should write and people should put feedback on? Is it a wiki page because I want other people to edit it? They don't edit blog pages. Context. Figuring out when, where, why, what the right tool is the best thing that you can do to kind of eliminate some of that. So that's kind of the things we had today. That's kind of the social. Hopefully that kind of gets you excited about going back to work and going, we're not doing cave drawings at our office. We're a little bit better than that, but we're not way over here where Alan is saying, let's integrate CRM and ERP and Dropbox and all these things into our intranet. We're not quite there yet, so you've got some takeaways to do that. But let me leave you with just 2 minutes of what I'm excited about that we're going to kind of see in the future. So behind the red curtain, if we pull it away, there's a lot of things happening around intelligence and big data and insert buzzword here that is going to be, for the first time, the computers are fast enough, the data is there, and all this sort of information to actually help me start answering these questions. This is my main research theme of 2014. I think this is really, really cool. I mentioned since the early 90s, I've been adding more and more tools, and every tool and every promise tells me I'm going to be able to get my job done better. And they have. Chat lets me get answers back. Social intranets let me find out what people are doing and meet my colleagues and things. But absolutely no tool out there that I'm aware of yet, and if you're building one or know of one, come to me as a researcher, actually tells me what should I be doing right now, what is effective, and what have I done in the past that wasn't effective. You know, I spent 8 hours writing that blog post that nobody really cared about. Or, you know what, I've got 12 research reports I should be writing right now. Prioritize them for me. The tools give you the ability to communicate and collaborate and have community, but no tools out there are doing your job for you yet. So when do we get to the stage like this? If there's any science fiction people out there, if you know Iron Man, he's got this amazing tool called Jarvis. Just another really very intelligent system is what Jarvis stands for. Jarvis is an artificial intelligence computer that does a whole bunch of things for him. When he's inside his suit, it tells him, you know, what to shoot at and where to fly and all of these types of things. It helps him work out all of his engineering problems, but it also physically manifests itself in these tools that help him build things. And the point is that Tony Stark, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., he doesn't do everything himself. He actually says, we need to get this Iron Man suit built, and Jarvis goes off and does it. We don't have that at work yet. I don't have a tool that says, Alan, you have 3 research reports you need to be working on. Let me go scour the web for you and bring you back the latest content that has to do with big data and cloud and mobile, and let me actually write you a bunch of text, and then you can kind of massage it and research it before we publish it. I don't want it to work on my behalf. But we don't have these brilliant personal digital assistants yet. And this is where I think we're going to start to get to. I think the coming together of these 4 vectors is one of the most exciting things that I'm seeing happening. What we do is we put this in the middle of what I call personal analytics. For any community managers out there, we all know analytics is the greatest thing. We love to see reports, and we love to have charts, and we love to see stuff. But all of the analytics that are out there today are about the larger aspect. Very few tools are about my personal analytics. I shared this file. Okay, great. Some of the software vendors out there, you know, Igloo included, show you some great things. How many people viewed it? How many people downloaded it? But okay, let's say I upload file A and file B. File A has been downloaded 500 times, file B has been downloaded 50 times, and I look at it and go, ooh, A must be 10 times better than B. But what if the tool actually then went off, figured out who the people that downloaded it were, went off to your CRM system or your customer support system or your marketing system, gathered more information about the people that were actually looking at your content, and brought back information to you that said, this file that you did actually helped the company in more ways. Maybe it only had 1 download, but maybe the customer support person answered a question because of it. Or maybe a file that had less downloads actually closed a sales deal for $100 billion, where 5,000 people downloaded a file that didn't lead to anything. You know, the idea is that all of this big data is the future of this analytics. It's not just views and downloads, it's effectiveness of data. So that's kind of the bringing in the data. And this quantified self movement, I'm embarrassed I'm not wearing mine right now as I say this, but how many of you walk around with Fitbits or Nike Fuel Bands or, you know, any of these other tools? We've got a couple in the back of the room. How many steps have you done today? Okay, well, the tool should tell you. It should move your legs for you or something. But all of this quantified self-movement. In healthcare, you saw Apple released HealthKit last week. Google is doing contact lenses in your eyes that monitor your insulin levels. You know, it's incredible how much stuff is going on about us. There's no quantified self at work. There's no tool that is sort of saying, you know what, you've spent X amount of time on this, you need to spend more time on that, maybe you haven't blogged enough, etc. So bring in the data of what I've written and what I'm working on, start to give me some quantification around it. I already told you how important it is to assign tasks to it, and then give me advice on what I should be working on. The closest in this actionable advice thing that I've seen today is Google Now. So I don't know how many people go with the combat Google versus Apple and Siri versus Google now. But Google now tells me some really scary stuff that I've never asked it to tell me. I swipe up and it tells me what packages are being delivered to my door because it's scanned my email for FedEx shopping codes and things like that. It tells me how my sports teams are doing. It's not just, oh, here's the weather in the location using the GPS in your phone. It's doing a lot more than that. It's starting to look and give me advice on things that I want to know. So I look at bringing these 4 things together: the data of what you're working on, information about how effective you've been doing it, assigning priorities and people to help me with it, and then giving me advice on what to do. That's the Jarvis for the enterprise. And that's where I get really jazzed. 20 years of software has done a great job at giving me new tools, but not a single piece of software does my job for me yet. It's enabled me to do my job better, faster, more effective, meet people, translate it into languages, all sorts of good things. But no software tool has done my work for me yet. So this is where I get really excited. Bring in these social features to improve the way not only we collaborate, but the way we communicate on your intranet, push down messages from your top-level executives, things like that. Put some structure around what you're doing to combat those challenges, the 3 challenges that I mentioned. So you start to focus on context instead of content. Start to focus on task management and project management. So it's not just random things happening in the stream, but it's actually trackable information. And then this next generation of tools that I hope gets you excited, and I hope the Igloo people in the room and all the other vendors I work with kind of focus a lot on this, and we're going to see over the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years, this intelligence that's happening to actually help us get our jobs done. So I hope that inspires you. Go off, be social, tweet, do all that lovely stuff.